Hey, everybody, welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It is Monday, April 15th. Please hit subscribe on YouTube and visit santabarbaratalks.com and consider a contribution to support this podcast. Okay. I want to talk about journalism today and sort of put my journalism educator hat on and a story that I read, which really kind of hit home because it sort of talked about a lot of the things that are always on my mind and a lot of things that I am always dealing with. Okay, so it's from the Free Press, and the headline is it's a column. I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust. And then the summary headline, a veteran at the public radio institution says the network lost its way when it started telling listeners how to think. Okay, so I want to read a core excerpt from that in just a second. But the reason this is important is I've been a journalist for more than 20 years, and I've been a teacher for, I don't know, 13 years now. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening, which is there's so much pressure from activists and advocacy groups, and these are on all sides, it's like liberal people, this is conservative people, to get journalists to write stories, to tell stories in a way that perpetuates their goals, advances their goals, perpetuates their agenda. This has always happened. This has always existed. This is why journalists are trained to be neutral on topics. But in this increasingly polarized world that we live in, it is very much exponentially exacerbated the pressures that we get as journalists to tell stories in a way that benefits one group at the expense of others. And there's so much talk about media literacy, and I really believe media literacy is important, particularly understanding what real news is versus fake news is. But the real media literacy that I think we should be teaching in elementary schools and junior high and eventually high school is the act of putting a story together. Like, I think we should be teaching students how to write stories, how to go out and report and write. And I think we do a good job on the technical end, particularly with some of our local high schools. We do have the great equipment. We do have the great technical ability to tell a story. And those skills are vastly important. They're huge. I love them. We should all be teaching them. But in addition to that, we need to be teaching people about balance. We need to be teaching people about how difficult it is to go out and report a story, to take complicated things and talk to people who are experts in their fields and then unravel them and explain them to a mass audience. Journalists have to do that very quickly, a lot of times just in a few hours. Sometimes we have a day or a couple of days, and we have to explain that in a way that makes sense to people so anyone reading it can feel as though they had a fair understanding of that particular topic. That is an incredible skill. It's an undervalued skill. And it's a skill that sadly, unfortunately, a lot of people don't even appreciate or understand because they've been raised in this generation in these silos to think that journalism should be advocacy, journalism should be used to hurt or harm. And that's really not why we exist. Journalists exist to shine a light on corrupt systems. We are watchdogs. We need to hold government accountable. We need to hold private corporations accountable. Systems are broken, and we see that every day. There are so many flaws. The people who are hurt the most are at the bottom of the class system, the economic system. The most vulnerable are exploited by the people who are most in power. And we have to tell those stories. That is absolutely true, and that is real. But where some journalists go a little bit off the rails, and I want to point this at the sources, though, because they're the ones that need to have the understanding, is we don't exist to perpetuate your agenda. We exist to tell the world about a situation and have people make up their own minds on how to react to that situation. Journalists have more power if they can talk to everybody. We have more influence if everybody feels as though they're going to get a fair shake by talking to us. We have less power. We have less ability to make an impact and have influence if only some people feel like they can trust that what they tell you is going to be reported accurately. That's hugely important, and especially for the activists and advocates to understand, because journalists get used all the time. I've been used so many times by advocates and activists, and these are people in power. These are conservatives. These are liberals. These are progressives. These are people all over the political spectrum people say, let's try to plant a story. Let's cultivate this story with this journalist, and let's see if we can get a perspective on it. Now, most often this happens with people of power. I just did a story on this housing project that's proposed for the Miramar Hotel, and these very powerful public relations teams put the heavy spin job on me. And it was almost insulting because I can sort of see it all coming. But it's kind of ridiculously insulting that they're basically telling me something is how it is when I know it's not that way. But my job is to not argue with them. My job is to not say you're wrong or to go back and forth. My job is to listen to them, try to make sense of the parts they're saying that are truthful and report those. And if they're saying things that are not truthful, hold them accountable. Okay. But my job is to not get in there and do their bidding and say, oh, they're being super nice to me, so therefore I should write a story that reflects their perspective. And my job is not, on the other hand, to attack them and harm them and use my journalism to make their project look terrible because, maybe I feel that way, or maybe a lot of my sources feel that way. Like, that's not my job either. My job is to take all of these complex topics and explain them to the readers. I did a story on the Glen Annie Golf Club the other day, and I mean, here's the first story that I can think of that was like really in detail about what this project is, what it would mean for traffic impacts, what it would mean for neighborhood impacts. And somebody who like hates the project emails me and says, oh, you dropped the ball. You missed all this. You should have done this, this, and this. It's like, if I would have done that, that, and that would be me advocating against the project. That would be me using my power to hurt a development, whether I like the development or not. That is entirely inappropriate. And I think that's like the missing thing people don't understand, because in the real world, most people aren't trained that way. Most people aren't trained to be able to take a whole bunch of information and critically think it and then explain it to an audience without trying to make them feel a certain way about that topic. That's an incredible skill. And we have less of an understanding. And I think if we teach people from a very early age, it's important to learn about California. It's important to learn about our history. It's important to learn how to write stories and essays. But let's teach them how to write a news story. Go talk to this person and this person, do some research, and then put it all together in a way where you're not ending it with your conclusion. You're not starting it with your thesis. You are just reporting it in a way where people understand how important this topic is. And no matter what they think, they feel fully informed. That is our goal. That is our role of journalism. So in this column, this journalist says the whole column is about how slowly their independence as a journalist has been eroded by activists who've waged influence in the newsroom over the type of stories they cover. And when they cover things that they believe are pro a certain viewpoint they don't agree with, how there's pushback. And so how the managers and the editors sort of really embraced this initiative to make stories more inclusive of different viewpoints. And but to the point where they had influence over the newsroom and decisions. So let me read this to you. In essence, this means the NPR Union, of which I am a dues-paying member, has ensured that advocacy groups are given a seat at the table in determining the terms and vocabulary of our news coverage. Conflicts between workers and bosses, between labor and management, are common in workplaces. NPR has had its share. But what's notable is the extent to which people at every level of NPR have comfortably coalesced around the progressive worldview. And this, I believe, is the most damaging development at NPR, the absence of viewpoint diversity. Okay, so somebody's going to hear that and says, oh, well, that's like a, conservative talking points. Not really. Okay, we all benefit if all of our perspectives have the ability to be reported on without fear of judgment. Okay. Journalists should not be filtering out people who they don't agree with and only reporting views of people who they agree with, or they shouldn't be doing sort of the bare minimum to satisfy our need for journalistic balance. And I don't really hold the journalists sort of too much accountable here. It's the sources that do this. The sources will pressure journalists. They will use journalists. Like activists and advocates love journalists as long as they're writing about things in a way that they agree with. The second you stop doing that, they will find another journalist to talk to. They will find another journalist to try to perpetuate their agenda with. And this is true of conservative activists. This is true of liberal activists. They will tell you what you want to hear. They will tell journalists what they want to hear in order for them to get their messaging out, to get their story out. And we as journalists have to push back. We have to say, I understand, but we need to include the entire story here. Okay. And that's really difficult to do, especially in a small town, especially in Santa Barbara, where we kind of all know each other. And if you lose access to a source, then sometimes you're kind of worried that you're not going to be able to break a big story. And the sources know that. The activists know that. I mean, I have elected officials who do that to me, who will like, oh, well, I want Josh to write a story, so I'm going to be really nice to Josh. And then Josh doesn't write a story, and then they go be nice to someone else. And it's like part of the game that they play. But I just really want to reinforce that if you want the best press, if you want the best media, if you are an activist out there, and this is no matter where you're at on the spectrum, if you're with the Republican Central Committee, if you're with the Democratic Central Committee, if you're a conservative real estate mogul, or if you're a renter, if you're somebody who has a lot of power, if you're somebody who has a little bit of power, it doesn't matter, right? We exist to tell the truth about what's happening in our community. We don't exist to be mouthpieces for anyone. And in my sake, I've been talking on this podcast for a long time about how Santa Barbara County Planning Department, how certain members of the Board of Supervisors, certain members of the City Council, these government elected officials with power who want you to write stories in a way that perpetuate their own goals, political goals, so that they can benefit off the backs of that hard-earned journalism. It might feel good in the moment for the journalist to do that, but it hurts the credibility of the institution of journalism in the long run if you pander to elected officials, if you pander to activists, if you pander to anyone in power in that particular moment. And so I would just say to those people, stop doing that. Stop using journalists. And stop getting mad if a journalist writes a story that you think you would have written differently. Because of course you would have written differently. You're not a journalist. I couldn't go into your place of work and do your job better than you because I don't know how to do your job. So if I'm doing my job, what makes you think you should be able to tell me how I can do my job? Okay. Let us do our jobs. Let us write our stories. Let us be fair and balanced and as objective as we can and sort through all of the nonsense and write a story that is for everybody. Because the more you push activists to do journalism that hurts other people, that only reflects your perspective, the more damage you do to your credibility and the journalist's credibility. And that doesn't benefit anyone. I don't think anyone would say that we are better off in this world of journalism where we have liberal media and we have conservative media. I don't think anyone would think that was good at all. That's a problem. We need to get back to a place where we can consume media, whether you're a right-winger or a progressive, and feel as though that story captures the essence of everything that is happening in a community, free of favor, free of bias, And everyone could walk away from that feeling as though they had some representation in that story. And then the power of the journalism is by shining a light on that topic, people can then be empowered to make their own decisions in the real world and possibly influence the future and change what's to come. That is what is most powerful about journalism. What is not powerful about journalism is using it to perpetuate your own personal agenda on a specific topic. Because although it may feel good in the moment, and if you're a journalist, it might feel good that the activists are patting you on the back in the moment, they will turn on you like that the second you do something that they don't agree with. And that is true of all spectrums, all levels of advocates, no matter what the agenda is. So I'm just wanted to kind of share that with you, that here we have NPR, which is this beloved institution. Now we have people, like there was a time when people would say, you know, I don't really agree with NPR, but it is responsible journalism. And now we have people who are not even saying that anymore. And that's a tragedy. That's very sad. That's very disappointing. We as journalists need to be stronger. We need to be emboldened to hold everyone accountable. The people I let my hair down with, so to speak, the most are journalists. Right? That's my safe place. Because if you do it too much with your sources, it will always come back to haunt you. They will always ask for a favor. They'll always get mad because they feel let down the road when you have to write a story. Heaven forbid you'd be accused of betraying them because you did your job. All right. So that's it. Have a great day. Please visit www.santabarbatalks.com. Hit subscribe on YouTube. And thanks for watching. Have a great week. And I'll be back later this week. Thanks a lot. Bye.